The problem with writing these scripts like days to weeks in advance before I actually record them is I'll write something like, oh, I'm struggling with this. And then like 3 or 4 scripts down the road, I'm no longer struggling with it. So I say that today to be like, yeah, I was struggling with this. I'm not struggling with it so much anymore. So let's take a look at it. All right, number 5. Finally, for our prayers to be effective, we must be persistent. We must continue to ask until we get our answer. This is the main point of the story about the widow described in Luke 18:1-7. Jesus' instruction to keep on asking, keep on seeking, keep on knocking is meant to teach us to pray patiently and persistently. That does not mean we have to beg God over and over for things. Neither does it mean we do not have faith that God heard and has an answer for us. Praying persistently means that instead of worrying about a situation, we take it to God whenever it comes to mind, realizing that He is in control and will do what is best. The Apostle Paul also urges us to devote ourselves to prayer, and that's in Colossians 4:2, and then see notes for 1 Thessalonians 5:17. God's faithful people throughout history have recognized this principle. For example, on one occasion, the Israelites were successful in their battle against the Amalekites, but success came only as long as Moses kept praying with his hands raised towards God. After Elijah received the prophetic message from God that rain was coming, he kept praying until it actually started to rain. On a previous occasion, this great prophet had prayed long and hard that God would bring back to life a widow's dead son. He did not stop calling to God until the Lord answered his prayer. So again, I'll say, I don't like the idea of annoying God. And I get it, the Fire Bible says, don't see it that way, but honestly, how can you not? So again, as I've been studying, this comes to mind again, the Holy Spirit's convicted me on it. This might be another case of we're only going to God when we are in trouble. And I've been saying it over and over again, we should be praying to God and talking to God as we would anybody else. And it made me think about when I asked my wife to do something. Like, do I have to ask her more than once? Now, yes, that could be because she forgot, and I'm not trying to say that God forgets, but how important is it if I only ask once, whether or not she forgot? And I gotta ask, is that a fair comparison? Maybe, maybe not. We're gonna keep looking at it, but let me know what you all think in the comments. But we'll get into this more as I go ahead and do my introduction for those who may be new here. Good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever the Holy Spirit brings us across your timeline. My name is Michael. Welcome to Ongoing Gospel Seekers. We've been studying an article in my Bible titled Effective Prayer. And effective prayer in our definition is continual communication with God in our lives. We reached a point in the article that is currently on the requirements for effective prayer. And now we come to number 5, which we are to be persistent within our prayers. So let's get into it. I honestly ask myself all the time, why did Jesus put it this way? In effective prayer for to understand, receive, and experience, I said this. There's something to be said about being persistent. And I have notes that I want to get into more later. But in all honesty, I'll say this now, I don't necessarily like the idea of annoying God. But I also feel like a very human way to look at this. And the Holy Spirit reminded me that He gave me a love for word studies. So let's look at the definition of persistent. Our definition is continuing firmly or obstinately in a course of action in spite of difficulty or opposition, but also continuing to exist or endure over a prolonged period. I'll say it again, God is not our instant gratification genie in a bottle. It's about building a relationship. So let's go back to that analogy with my wife. If I ask her to do something, she'll do it. But I think back on that teenage girl that I met on a school bus. And let me clarify that, as I just said, that we were high school sweethearts. We met in our sophomore year of high school. I don't need you out here thinking other things. She's actually 6 months older than me. Okay, let's put it that way. Anyway, thinking back to that girl that I first met, there are things that I can ask her to do today that girl back then wouldn't have done. Just for example, my wife listening to the direction of the Holy Spirit through me would not have happened if me in high school had not been spending time ministering to her. Yes, back before the day of smartphones, we had physical keyboards, and I would type out Bible verses to this woman to help her deal with the mess she had going on at home. Over time, I was persistent in showing her who God is, and it allowed her to build her own relationship with Him. And now that I sit here, years later in our relationship, if I'm honest, I don't think I was being annoying then. And like I said in episode 4, maybe I keep looking at continually going to God from a human perspective. I said it earlier, how much does something mean to me if I only talk about it once? My wife coming to know the Lord, even in the midst of her situations, how much did that mean to me? Do we not consistently pray for family and friends that do not know the Lord, knowing that salvation can take time, and so we keep going back to God in prayer about them, Do we consider that annoying God? I honestly think it's the whole we only go to God when we're in trouble mindset. That has to be the mindset. When you think about Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane for there being another way for salvation, or the fact that Paul prayed 3 times for the thorn in his flesh to be removed, neither one of those moments in time are seen as annoying God. And in both those situations, God said, no, we're going to do it my way. So like I said, this has been a wrestle point for me, but I'm starting to get it. So what about y'all? Let me know in the comments. But that's all I have for you today. If the Lord wants us to, we will see each other again, and then we will continue to seek the good news of the Holy Spirit together. Love y'all. Shalom.